Hi, and welcome back to the DPAF podcast format. And today I wanted to talk about whether Britain is involved in this Wuhan lab leak, because the word on the street a year ago was that the virus emanated out of a Wuhan wet market, and Carrie Symonds was out there, you might remember, saying, we needed to ban all of these wet markets worldwide because, they were a cause of, spreading dangerous viruses and all this sort of thing. And now fast forward just over a year later, and the word on the street is that, the coronavirus emanated out of Wuhan, but not out of the wet market, it was out of the lab. And the question is, how did it get out of the lab? And obviously, what is the connection to the lab that, is worth investigating? And I think the implication always has been, this is a lab in China, this is China run, this is, China managed, and this was a sort of a deliberate, bioweapon or virus leak caused by China to infect the West and cause damage for the West. And of course, now it turns out, based on these Fauci emails, that Fauci and the American government, via the National Institute of Health, was funding this lab, and they were funding it with a British-run organisation called EcoHealth Alliance, run by a British guy called Peter Daszak. And does anyone know this guy, Peter Daszak? Because I think it would be wise for the British government to ask this guy a lot of questions. There's a lot of building pressure in the United States that, because of all this economic and financial damage done by the virus and by the lockdowns, that China, presumably the guilty party, needs to pay 10 trillion in reparations. And I wonder if it turns out that actually it's Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance that caused the virus, whether Britain would be on the hook for the $10 trillion, whether Britain will be charged with reparations or not. Also, another theory that I'm beginning to formulate is the United States themselves responsible for causing this virus to leak, assuming it was done deliberately, assuming it was done from the lab, assuming Carrie Symonds was incorrect, calling for wet markets to be shut down worldwide, assuming the leak came from there, the virus came from there. Because the United States government, the permanent government, seems to me had three incentives to release this potentially not that harmful virus across the world, cause the mass panic, cause the lockdowns, and yield three benefits from them. Benefit number one was a mass bailout of the financial system. The repo market had just crashed in September 2019. So there was a need to recapitalize the system, to the tune of several $1 trillion, and lockdown gave political cover to that desperate need. There was also the massive incentive to remove Donald Trump from office under the cover of, mass election changes for mail-in voting, to manipulate results, essentially, remove Trump from office, allow a Biden victory with the biggest electoral victory in American history, even though he did no campaigning. And the third benefit is really to frame China as the perpetrator of the virus and charge them the 10 trillion in reparations, when, as many people know, America are on the hook to China. They are massively indebted to China financially without the ability to pay. So instead of paying the debt that they can't afford, why not just charge China 10 trillion in reparations and reduce debt that way? Now, people are saying, well, David, you get a bit carried away with all this stuff. But, why can't we, as the British people, ask these tough questions? Why is it when anyone asks tough questions about where the virus emanated from, they're shut down? And even this guy, Peter Daszak, he sent an email to Fauci that's just been released, says, I want to personally thank you on behalf of our staff and collaborators for publicly standing up and stating that the scientific evidence supports a natural origin for COVID-19 from a bat to human spillover, not a lab release from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. But I mean, now it seems that it does, and Daszak wanted to cover up the narrative that the virus emanated from the lab because he was running the lab, and wanted to pass it off as being from the wet market, have people like Carrie Simmons jump on the bandwagon, and I think it's time, well, it was time back then, but I suppose better late than never. People don't worry about the perpetrators of criminality if they are connected to government. But I suppose as time passes, people can look into this, and I think that's probably where we are now. So a lot of interesting things emanating from this story. As I've said many times, my interest in the lockdown was totally predicated on British civil liberties and the violation of civil liberties by the government. It's total criminality by the British government to violate any British civil liberties, let alone all of them. And it's long overdue they be fully held to criminal account for that. I don't know if this guy Daszak is involved in causing the virus to spread. I don't know if he is connected to the British government in any way. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Maybe he's connected to the US government. I just don't know. But these are the kind of things that the British government should be looking into, rather than worrying about, violating British civil liberties forever with things like vaccine passports. I think it's time they maybe look at the perpetrators of these offences rather than try to politically profit out of them. A couple of other points I want to make, smaller points. I think everyone should be looking into the World Economic Forum as, being cheerleaders for this coronavirus crisis. They had the mock event at Johns Hopkins University in October 2019, holding a mock event as to what they would do if a coronavirus were to break out across the world, and then lo and behold, 3 months later it did. They did a press release saying that the event was not a prediction, but it certainly seemed pretty insightful. Bill Gates has been funding World Health Organization, all these health bureaucracies around the world for the last decade. Does he have a philanthropic motive for doing all that, or does he have a financial motive for doing that? I mean, if these vaccines are $100 a pop, and they need to be administered annually with everyone in the world, how many trillions in income is that to, drug manufacturers, vaccine manufacturers, Bill Gates himself? I don't know the economics of it, but I think someone should look into it. If all this profit is going to be yielded, there's a great incentive to have a deliberate crisis, maybe a lab leak from somewhere in China, to profit from it on the back end. I think maybe people in the British government should be looking into this stuff more carefully. Prince Charles has been really tight with the World Economic Forum. Is he part of the criminality, or is he investigating the potential criminality on behalf of the British people? It'd be nice to ask him some questions about that. And then finally, a story in the paper this week, Theresa May supporting more foreign aid from Great Britain to other parts of the country in a time where we have, going from 2 trillion in debt to 4 trillion in debt. And of course, foreign aid is a racketeering entity. It's a way for former prime ministers and members of the political establishment to earn money. They facilitate transfers of foreign aid from British taxpayers to foreign countries that haven't earned the money, and then they get rewarded on the back end in the foreign country. It's an end around domestic ethics laws. And, these former prime ministers can be rewarded with speeches, with luxury holidays, with cash to their foundations. and it's all a total bunch of fraud, perpetuated on the British people and on British taxpayers by the British establishment. We need to start electing prime ministers that have, an ethical backbone. David Cameron's been out there recently with the Green Seal crony capitalism case. A lot of people have seen. Theresa May is on the same racketeering exercise, and I think we need very, very strict laws with our former prime ministers after they leave office, so that they are not making decisions in office solely for the purpose of their financial benefit when they leave office, like all these prime ministers seem to do. Also, it might be noteworthy to point out at this time, it's time to elect prime ministers that actually have integrity than completely lack integrity. So I hope these points are food for thought for you. I really appreciate you listening. Please send these to your friends and your family. Please subscribe to the channel, and we'll look forward to talking with you soon.